Hello and welcome to episode 38 of the Crash and Ride podcast. I'm Patrick Ferguson. I'm your host. Today's guest is Sam Scholten. Sam is in the Louisville band Bon Air. He was formerly in the band Stellar Regrets with his sweet wife, Lisa. Lisa passed away from cancer at 42, and part of what we talk about today is Sam's journey out of the darkness and sadness of losing his wife at such a young age. It's a really, really important story, and I'm really glad Sam came and talked to us. This was originally supposed to be my first services episode. I was going to talk to Nucci Space and Backline, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, the Trans Support Peer Lifeline. All these people, I was going to get them on the phone and talk to them about the services they provide and how to get in touch with them and all that. And Nucci Space and Backline responded immediately. Surprisingly, some of these other 501c3s have been really unresponsive, and I'm a little shocked. You know, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, I'm sure they're overwhelmed. We're in the middle of a mental health crisis. But the Trans Peer Support Line, I called their direct number because I couldn't find press contact for them anywhere online. And I went into the call rotation for their whole system on their crisis line. And after 45 seconds, it dumped my call. This is like a Rodney Dangerfield joke. Oh, I called the Suicide Prevention Lifeline and they put me on hold. It's worse than that. It just hung up on me. Look, I know I have some trans listeners and I have some friends who are trans people, and I'm going to talk to them this week, and we're going to talk about this because you can't have a suicide prevention phone number that hangs up on people. You might as well put a gun to their heads. And I'm maybe going to contact someone at Out Magazine or The Advocate or one of these organizations that might be able, because I wield a very tiny sword in this battle. I'm a podcast with about 1,000 listeners, and believe me, I love every one of you, but I think this is a crisis and it needs to be addressed. And it doesn't need to be my voice as a straight, cis, het, white, blah, blah, blah guy. It needs to be someone in that community who can really, be heard, because it's unacceptable. So anyway, part of the reason the episode is late is because I had planned to have all these other people on the phone and record some conversations with them and put it together into one hour-long podcast. But also, yesterday I drove up to North Carolina kind of on a whim with my family, and I went to my hometown, Eden, North Carolina, where I was born, and we did a sort of post-capitalism disaster tour of the places that used to be there. And I'm going to write about that. I've been doing some writing lately. A lot of you have seen it on Facebook and shared it, and I'm very grateful for that. I've got a thing up on Medium, like an account, and I publish to it, and I'm going to put links to it on the website at crashandridepodcast.com. So if you're interested in my opinions about anything, I don't know why anybody would be. That's why I try to make it funny. It's all there. If this is your first episode of Crash and Ride is a long-form interview podcast where I talk to musicians who've survived anxiety, depression, and addiction. The idea was that if we could have honest conversations and tell the truth to each other, we could start to see the sufferings of ourselves and the sufferings of others, and we could actually start to heal. As I've said many times on this podcast and elsewhere, lacking affordable mental health care or health care really of any kind, if you're self-employed and a musician, no one's going to take care of us but us. So with that in mind, I wanted to create a chorus of voices that could help lift up people who were still suffering, where we could get together and talk about what it was like, what happened, and what we're like now, and where our lives are at. We could give some hope to the hopeless and just help lift each other up, because this job of being a musician can be really tough, and you're only encouraged to show the most positive face that you have to the world. And, a lot of us are struggling. And so I wanted to make sure that that part of our lives was represented here. Before I waste too much of your time, let me get a couple of quick announcements. Crash and Ride is brought to you in part by Greer Amplification. Greer Amps builds the best boutique effects pedals available. If you're looking for an overdrive, boost, fuzz, compressor, or tremolo that is rugged, road-tested, and at home, on stage, in the studio, or in your living room, Greer has a pedal for you. Nick and his staff strive to build the best products around with the best tone you've ever heard. They believe in their products, and they stand behind them too, backing each one up with a lifetime warranty to the original owner. Each Greer Amps product is hand-built in Athens, Georgia, USA. Go to www.greeramps.com or visit your favorite music retailer today. I saw this great band from Mobile, Alabama this week called the Red Clay Strays, and this is not like a paid announcement or anything. I saw this band and I loved them, and they were really, really great, really unexpectedly brilliant, and I took them to Nick's shop the next day because I was like, look, you guys love guitars. Nick loves guitars. He makes great stuff, and I'm sure you've heard about the Lightspeed and the Super Hornet and the Sucker Punch and all these killer pedals that Nick makes. So I took him by there, And man, they had a great time. And they bought some pedals, but also, they just got to hang out with Nick. He's a real dude. He's got a shop. You can walk in and hang out. And you should check it out. Crash and Ride is also brought to you in part by Jittery Joe's, a local coffee roaster based in Athens, Georgia. They have an espresso blend named after the podcast. You can get Crash and Ride whole bean in cans or bags from my website, crashandridepodcast.com. Go to the store page, and you can get it there, and I'll send it out to you, and you can specify whether you want it whole bean or ground, and I'll mail it right to you. It's really delicious. You can also get shirts there. In the next few days, we're going to have a refill of all sizes. So if you're waiting on an extra large blue or black shirt that you got sold out on 2 weeks ago, well, I'll have some more like by the 20th. So I'm going to put up a pre-order, and you can jump in now if you want and get a new shirt. I'm working on getting some other kinds of merchandise. We should have coffee cups by the end of the year. Coffee cups are a big expense. You got to buy 144 of them at a time. So I'm working on that, and it costs a lot to ship 144 ceramic mugs. But that's all inside baseball shit. Nobody cares about that. Just stay tuned. I'll let you know when they're available. All right, today's episode. Sam is somebody I've known for a long time. I didn't know when I met him that his wife was dying, and then like sort of on the PRF telegraph. And if you listen to this show, you know what the PRF is, and we get into a little bit of that in the episode. But word went out: Sam's wife has died. Reach out if you can. And so the community kind of lifted Sam up, and he has rewarded us by forming one amazing band after another and pouring all of that sadness into his music. And Erica Rickson, who you know from a few episodes ago, when we were talking about what guests would you like to see on the show, and she's like, you got to talk to Sam. Sam's been through such a journey, and he's such a lovely guy. So we talk about his early life and getting into music and falling in love with Lisa and their romance, and then her being diagnosed with cancer and thinking that they'd beaten it, and then having it come back years later, and then ultimately taking her away from Sam. And it's a story of survival and of the great love that he had for his sweet wife and his life since then, and how he sort of put it all back together. And I'm really glad he was able to do it. So let's jump into our interview with Sam Scholten. All right, I'm here with Sam Scholten. He's a singer and songwriter with the band Bon Air, formerly of the band Stellar Regrets. He lives in Louisville, Kentucky, and I'm really honored to have him on the show. Hi, Sam.
Hi, it's an honor to be here. Man, some of the company, wow. It's an honor to be here, trust me. Man, Thank you.
I feel the same way. It's kind of crazy. Like, I look back at my list of guests, and I'm like, I can't believe all these fucking superheroes decided they would sit down and talk to me for an hour, so I'm really thrilled.
Oh, no shit, man. Like everyone listen to the Erica Rickson thing, the two-parter. That's amazing. Absolutely.
I mean, people ask me, like, what episodes do you recommend? And I'm like, well, parts 1 and 2 of Erica Rickson is really some of the best of what the show is supposed to be about. And so start there. So.
And it's great to have a forum to give people, just trying to build up a language to express, just all kinds of mental health and life stuff, because at the end of it, we're sort of, we're all we got sometimes,
Yeah, I was looking for the words to try to explain this to someone, like what the sort of impetus of this podcast was, and it was because I had some millennial friends who were really struggling with depression and alienation and anxiety, and as a Gen X guy, I didn't feel like just like me saying, well, when I was your age, kind of bullshit was going to be useful for anybody. But if I could sort of assemble a chorus of voices of people who they might find some common identity with, and they could see themselves in the sufferings of other people, then they might find a way out. And so that is really what the show is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell
me about what Bon Air's been up to lately.
Well, actually, we are wrapping up our second record, and it was supposed to go to mastering last month, but Russian Recording, the folks who were doing it, had some. They were in the middle of reconstructing their studio and had some setbacks and stuff, which is great because I wasn't 100% thrilled with our mixes, so that's given me a chance to go back and do things, and I'm much happier with it. So I'm stoked to have that out. That's looking to drop probably around January or so, although it's we're going to have it online a lot sooner than that for everyone to hear. And it's that we're just really excited about
So
that.
Russian Recording, that's Michael, what's his last name?
Mike Brodowski.
Yeah, and he is the owner of Little Bub, right? The sort of celebrity cat.
Yeah, Lil Bub. Yeah, absolutely.
What a small world. Is he?
I know, right? And
is he in Bloomington? Is he where? He's in Indiana somewhere, right?
Yeah, he's in Bloomington, and he came on some very strong recommendations. Like Rob from Wax Eater was just raving about the job he did on the Wax Eater record that came out, and they were happy with my friend Pat recorded and mixed that at Last Horizon Audio, and so they were happy with that, and they were really happy with Mike's mastering job on that, and so I'm like, wow, cool, let's do that, and we had Bob Weston master our last record, which I'm also super happy with too. But really lucky and blessed to know some people who are really able to steer us right. So looking forward to it.
I almost want to have a bonus episode because I think Michael's he's a pretty easygoing guy. I don't think he's really had a ton of anxiety and depression, but he's had this crazy experience with his studio because his studio that was outside of Nashville, Indiana, in Brown County, as I recall, between Bloomington and I can't remember the name of the little town in Brown County, was like crazy haunted. Like he kept having all these weird things happen. And I'm a skeptic about these things, but just love to hear crazy stories like that. And his was truly insane.
Well, I mean, the things that happened were very real. Were very real to him. So, I mean, something was going on.
Yeah.
So and I've only kind of gotten third stream information on that too. So I would absolutely love to hear his words.
Maybe I'll do a midweek episode. So like people who are counting on hard hitting, like super emotional content aren't like, what, ghost stories? I didn't sign up for ghost stories. So maybe I'll do a Wednesday release on that. I'll have to touch base with him about that. Are you from Louisville?
Half and half. Well, 1/3 and 2/3 actually. My folks are from Pennsylvania. My mom's from Pittsburgh. My dad's from Philly. They met in Lehigh. They met in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, right in the middle when they were going to college, and moved to Charleston, West Virginia. And then my folks split up. That was a mess, man. But then my dad moved out to Louisville, actually just outside Louisville. And so I'd spend a whole lot of summers and holidays and stuff like that out here, and that was a big part of my childhood. So a part of me is from Louisville, but also a part of me is from Charleston as well. And I spent a lot of time in Pittsburgh as well too. So that's a big part of me too.
Man, you've got steel and coal like all through your background. I mean, between Charleston, West Virginia, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, like that's 2 steel towns and 1 coal town. That's wild.
Pittsburgh is a lot of things at once. It is, it's depending on what part of the region you're from, Appalachian or Appalachian, you have to be respectful of,
right.
that. And it's also, it's a Rust Belt town. It's a Great Lakes town. It's a Northeastern town. It's all these things at once. It's a very nuanced, complicated place, and I love Pittsburgh. I always have an affinity for the place. It's been way too long since I've been there. I've got to get up there. As a matter of fact, I'm trying to set up a tour routing through there.
Yeah, I love Pittsburgh so much. Not just because we have a mutual friend there, Maurice, but also just because it's such a post-industrial town that has so much history. Just like if you stand up on, I think it's called Washington Point, and look down, you can see where Three Rivers Stadium, I guess it's not called Three Rivers anymore, it's some corporate sponsor, Three Rivers Stadium is, and you can see the confluence of those rivers, and as you go up the river, there's all the old factories there was a factory where iron ore was extracted from rock, and then, the Rockefellers and the Carnegies would use that river to transport that ore down to a steel factory, which was then broken out into various steel derivatives, stainless steel and all the alloys and stuff. And they used the river as a highway. So they made billions of dollars over not having to pay for gasoline and trucks. And so it's just a fascinating city and a beautiful city. And man, I would live there in a heartbeat if I had to.
Well, actually, I mean, that's a big part of American history too. A lot of our history centers around the railroads, and when that expanded in the 1800s. But before that, you had the rivers, and that's where, that's how Pittsburgh came into being, and that's how a lot of these came into being. Was that was pretty much how you were able to transport a lot of raw materials and stuff like that before you were able to put in the railroads, especially in that sort of rough terrain.
Yeah,
because I mean, Pittsburgh is yeah. I mean, you've got that trend that goes down like a 50-degree slope or something. Yeah. That's pretty scary.
Yeah. I haven't done that, but I've seen pictures and I want to try it one day. So your family, how old were you when your parents split up?
I was 4, but
so young.
Yeah. It was early on, but it left a pretty big mark on me as a kid. Actually, it's a very big and painful mark on me as a kid, because it was the separation took years, and the divorce was finalized a few years after that, and it was pretty ugly. And I was actually pretty traumatized from it. It made me like it. It sort of actually it crossed the border over into Munchausen by proxy at that point. Like, they legitimately thought I had Asperger's or something at that point, because I wasn't talking and I wasn't playing with toys or anything like that. I was secluding myself because, I mean, I was just a little kid and I didn't know how else to deal with this kind of stuff. And,
yeah.
And
so for people who don't know what Munchausen by proxy is, can you explain that?
Well, Munchausen syndrome is when someone someone is able to convince people that they're sick when they're really not, like people who fake cancer or whatever because they want the attention or whatever. Munchausen by proxy is when you are able to manipulate someone else into behaving like they're sick. And apparently Eminem had Munchausen by proxy when he was growing up too. The thing is, I don't mean to throw my family under the bus. I'm very happy. I love them. I'm very proud of them and all that stuff. But my mom and I sort of had a very difficult relationship growing up, where it was very complicated. She was not a happy person. And her basically, whenever she was just being real with you, she was always scolding in some way. And so I was always being scolded in one way or another. And I felt like nothing I was doing was right. Everything was wrong. And so I just, not having a point of reference until I started growing up more and, was spent time outside of that environment at school, making friends and all of that, where I had a different point of reference. I just kind of gave up because nothing I said was right. I was just like, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to withdraw completely. And I'm very fortunate and lucky to have had some people, who eventually noticed at a certain point that, and they've come out and told me, hey, listen, you're okay. You're not as fucked up as you think you are. And I'll also need to stop here too. And I really don't mean to, as far as anyone listening or close to someone who does have Asperger's or is on the spectrum as well, I also want to make a very clear point that there's nothing wrong with you as well. It's just a different, your mind is just oriented differently, and you deserve all the dignity and respect that anyone else does. And I want to make that very clear too. But
so it seems like, and this is something I saw. I had a single parent mom for a long time, and a lot of my friends did. And at the time, when we were younger, I guess your parents are kind of younger baby boomers, and divorce kind of ripped through that community in the late 70s and mid 80s and even into the early 90s,
sure,
like as a thing to do, like, and yet, like so many of the women of that time who ended up with the vast majority of custody of the kids, they felt unseen and kind of marginalized by the dual burden of child raising and having to make a living. And so I think for a lot of our moms, they just felt like invisibilized. And I could see how if the divorce was traumatic enough, and it sounds like in your case it was, just like having a child on the spectrum to be able to say, look, there's something wrong with Sam, was a way of being seen by her family, by your father, like just a way of establishing some narrative that allowed her to stay like in people's minds,
Right. True. And that's, there's, she has, the thing with her too is that, she's had a very difficult relationship with the rest of the family too. And, it's kind of been rocky between her and everyone else too. So there's that. I don't really mean to throw her under the bus or anything like that.
No, I understand. Let's be honest. All of our moms were doing the best that they could.
Absolutely. And she was in her mid-20s when she was doing this too. And you look back on your mid-20s and I'm thinking, man, if I were in my mid-20s, we're all still learning. We're all still winging it. And that's a big part of my, one of the biggest things I realized just going through adulthood is that everyone is still, winging it to some extent, even the most knowledgeable folks, once you go into a new situation. And you have to understand too, I'm sure you do, but one thing we have to keep focused on is that the early 70s, divorce was really just starting to become a thing. And it was a huge thing because, before that, it was just verboten. Your people our grandparents' age, they may have killed each other, but they stayed together.
Yes.
Whereas you had a lot of people in abusive relationships and things like that, who really needed to get the hell out of there. And so once divorce became, no-fault divorce became a thing in the 70s, where it finally felt like there was enough safety in there and enough of a sufficient quality of life that you could leave a shitty, abusive, toxic relationship or whatever, that there was this huge backlog of these marriages that just really needed to break up. And that's why it was such a huge thing.
Yeah. I mean, there was, I remember at some point around the time my folks got divorced, somebody thought it would be a good idea for me to watch Kramer versus Kramer.
Right.
This was a Dustin Hoffman film. I can't remember who the actress was, about divorce. And I remember it's like I was 11 and had no grasp of what was happening in that movie. And then Ordinary People, I think, was a similar sort of thing. And like there was this cultural moment of where like divorce is a thing that all our parents were going to do. But they had all had kids young, like their parents' generation. So there were a lot of us in Gen X kind of caught in this weird gap, between like people like us who waited to start families and people like them who started at 19, 20, 21 years old. So.
There was kind of a shockwave among like Gen X and Xennial type stuff, like a lot of 90s grunge and stuff. A lot of that seemed to be, products of divorce. I mean, Kurt Cobain famously and all that. So,
yeah.
Just kind of growing up in a broken home sort of became one of those common things that pretty much everyone did. And like, if you didn't come from one yourself, you inevitably knew someone who did, or you dated people who did, or any of that stuff. I mean, Lisa came from a broken home. It was just such a common thing through sort of like, in our sort of greater generation here too, like Gen X, Xennials, Millennials, and stuff like that. That's sort of been a ripple effect too.
Yeah, I think that though a lot of times, like people my age waited a lot longer to have kids just because they knew there was a strong possibility that first marriage was just going to be a starter marriage,
Well, I waited for Glacier to move before I got married for that reason. Like, I'm like, yeah, this is going to end up in divorce, I was against it for the longest time because I thought, well, this is, how many of these things really work out? But at the same time, we didn't have the benefit of seeing that, eventually these things were going to level off, and some things are successful. And this was a backlog of really bad relationships that really did need to end for the well-being of the people involved and stuff like that.
So when did music come into your life?
Well, it came into my life when I was in fifth grade. I tested out for marching band, and it turned out I had a really good ear for music. And apparently I picked that up from my grandpa on my dad's side. He was able to just pick up any instrument and start playing some kind of tune on it. He was never trained, but I'm told the family lore is that's where I got that from. So I did marching band and all that, and I was able to I learned how to read music doing that. And my stepdad, right before he moved and met my mom, he was younger. He was kind of crossed over into the oldest of the Gen X folks. He was not, or the youngest of the members. He played in a punk rock band, like when it very first came out. Like he was from Bay City, Michigan, and he played in a band called the Tea Snakes. That it was a local sort of punk rock new wave band that was like in the late '70s, and he played bass in there.
Wow!
So he brought all his records to the relationship and stuff like that, and so here I am, this little kid and stuff, and I'm hanging out with like hardcore kids and, people into thrash metal and stuff like that. So I had my own taste going, and, so my stepdad, Mark, he says, you should probably listen to where this all comes from. He had some Ramones records and London Calling, he had all those things. He had some older stuff too, because he was on the cusp. So he had a whole lot of the hippie records and stuff too, and some ELP and King Crimson and things like that as well. But that was kind of my first exposure to, to punk rock and stuff. And that was, and also the idea that this was something I could make and this is something I could do, because that's between that and listening to the, all the hardcore records that came out, you could sort of tell, even at my age, like 13, 14, 15, that these were done on a shoestring, which means this is attainable. This isn't something you have to, you don't have to go to Hollywood and, just go to, have some millionaire tap you on the shoulder by the hammer of the gods or something like that,
right,
and be taken in a limousine with a heart-shaped hot tub and all this kind of shit.
You'd have to book a studio, an Italian villa somewhere in the countryside of Tuscany and spend $1 million like Queen or something.
Right, exactly. Yeah, this is the thing that people are just getting together and doing.
Did you go into marching band?
Yes, I did go into marching band. I played trombone.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to play, the two things I wanted to pick were saxophone and trombone was cheaper to rent, so that's what I ended up with. So that which is all right, because it read in bass clef and in concert pitch, which my stepdad had some bass guitar thing like books too, and that was also in bass clef, and so I was kind of able to transfer that into learning how to play bass. And my mom had this one of those green stamp guitars. I think you have to be of a certain age to know what green stamp guitar is.
Oh, the S&H green stamps, yeah.
Yep.
Those were a lot of those were Matsumoku guitars, though. They weren't all terrible.
Yeah. Well, this one was pretty terrible, but I was able to. I was able to get some. She had, this is just tucked away in the attic, and I was just hanging out in the attic, just kind of exploring, because it's kind of wild to explore all the old shit that's up there. And so I found the guitar, and I found this Mel Bay book next to it. I'm like, I'm going to teach myself a little bit. I'm going to teach myself these chords and all this kind of stuff. And then that kind of developed into me. There was a guitar store that was like a half-hour walk from the house, and so I go down and buy these ooh, tablature. I can learn all these Led Zeppelin riffs, and so
right.
I was able to get to some Page riffs under my belt before I had my first electric guitar, that was pretty awesome.
What was your first electric?
It was this Harmony guitar that my dad got me for Christmas.
Oh, nice. Solid body, hollow body?
It was solid body. It was like, we were in the 80s, we're in the late 80s by this point. So right. It was like, it was kind of like a sort of a super strat type of thing.
Yeah.
Humbucker, single, and a sort of a pig nose amp for it to go into and stuff like that. But it had a nice, smooth little action on it. And, I was able to learn the blues box and, my first 12-bar blues stuff and, just do the wheedly stuff. And, man, I was hot stuff back then, man.
Yeah. Were you an only child?
No. I had, with my mom and my stepdad had a kid. too. So I have a half sister. She lives in Norway now.
What?
And
in Norway?
Yeah, she lives in Norway. So she and my mom also had a difficult relationship. So she ran off to Norway.
So what was your first band?
My first. I had started a whole bunch of like quirky, hardcore-ish kind of bands that never really got off the ground in junior high and high school and stuff. But the first band that really started gigging was called Special Interest Group, and it was we had there like the big hot stuff guitar teacher in town had, his son played drums with us for a while. It was wild because there were so many lineup changes that none of us were original members in there. But I ended up, it was like my first crack at writing songs and stuff like that. And I had a couple that were actually fairly decent. There's one song actually that I worked really hard on doing this really, really sort of wild, sort of Tony Levin meets Mike Watt kind of guitar thing for. Back then it was called Military Man, but now it's actually made it on the new Bon Air record. It's called Ladies Who Launch now. So that goes all the way back then too.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. So that was just knowing I had it in me to write songs and like cool riffs and stuff was that was a big release. I'm like, man, I'm able to like, just let go of so much crap. I can just leave it on the stage. And the thing is, like, other people get into it, and I get into other people's music too. And that was like my first sense of community where we're all just kind of commiserating together, and it's just kind of building this healthy bond. The whole scene bonding thing.
Yeah, was that in Charleston?
That was in Charleston, and there was a band I did called Howl after that, where I was doing. Just kind of getting more into Gang of Four-ish type of stuff.
Was Howl after the Allen Ginsberg poem?
Yes, after the Allen Ginsberg poem, absolutely.
Yeah. I was half expecting you to be like, no, like Thurston Howell from a...
Yeah. I was a kid, man. I was like, I just discovered the Beat Poets and, On the Road. And
that shit blew my mind in high school. When I discovered it, it was just like they put this stuff in books, like, because growing up in the South, you've got this fairly conservative education, and certain subjects are just not only like forbidden, but like not even spoken of. And to find out that like,
right,
there'd be a poem like Howl or a book like Exterminator by William Burroughs or any of that stuff, just felt like I had discovered this like treasure chest full of outlaw culture, which it changed the trajectory of my life.
Well, here's one of the things that was super cool about it, though. I had this one, this one professor when I was just getting into undergrad, where I was, he was teaching beat literature, and he was like the biggest proponent of, Appalachia, as he insisted it was called, like the culture and, just the roots of it, all the way back from Ulster, Scotland and stuff like that. And he was like the biggest champion of that, but he was also gay, and he was also part of the, he was also huge into, just avant-garde literature and things like that. And that was, being exposed to that was pretty awesome, because that was a good way to see across those things. And it's just like, well, the South is the South, and, Appalachia and stuff like that is a whole lot more complicated and nuanced if you just look into it and just get over your prejudices about it. And, that was a big formative thing for me, too. So,
do you know the West Virginia writer, Breece D'J Pancake, or D'J Pancake? I'm not sure how it's pronounced. I've only read his name.
No.
He was young, and he wrote like one collection of short stories. He was at like University of West Virginia or West Virginia State or whatever it was, and he
WVU probably.
Yeah, and just wrote these amazing stories. And there's probably only, I think, less than 25 of them total, and then he killed himself.
Oh, Pancake was his name?
Yep, which is apparently not an uncommon last name in parts of West Virginia. Right.
From what I understand, in the Eastern Panhandle, that's That's a pretty common thing, actually, in Western Virginia and Eastern West Virginia.
That's not far from where I'm from, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I'm hoping to get Sean Brock on the show soon, and I was doing some research on him, and he's from Pound, Virginia, and it turns out that I've met him, and I didn't realize it because I was in a band with a guy from Abingdon, Virginia, which is also right there, and that's 3 hours from Eden, North Carolina, where I'm from. You go straight through the mountains into coal country like Blue Fields and all that, and I'm down in the Piedmont in Eden, from where all the cotton mills and stuff are. So.
Oh yeah, Bluefield is right. Actually, it's a border town. There's, it straddles the border.
Yeah, so that's been pretty fertile ground for writers, chefs, and musicians. When did you move to Louisville?
Well, Lisa and I had decided we were going to play it straight for a while. We were going to, we were both like punk rockers hanging out and stuff like that.
So is Lisa's from Charleston too?
Yeah.
So tell me about meeting her, because I'm getting ahead of myself. I didn't realize that you met her before you moved to Louisville.
Yeah, she and I met at one of my band practices. She was getting into singing and putting her own band together, and so she was looking to scope out the drummer that we had, and of course, I wasn't like pissed off at her or anything like that, because the way it works is a lot of drummers are in 3 or 4 or 5 different bands.
Yeah.
The whole thing. So anyway, I still was kind of like, I just need to check out just who this person is who's about to poach our drummer here. I need to see what makes her tick, see what she was all about. I had to size her up. Just a couple of weeks later, we just ended up dating. So,
right.
So yeah, she came to steal our drummer, but stole me instead.
Right.
And it was so funny because she lived a block up from me, and it was kind of one of those the night we never met type of situations where I actually ran into her and said hi when I didn't even know who the hell she was. But I'm like, she's pretty cool. She had this ragged out Thunderbird that had the SST Corporate Rock Still Sucks sticker on it. And,
yeah.
Some kind of punk rock T-shirt, well, probably, just whatever. She just looked really cool, and I may have seen her at this one place called the Empty Glass, which is kind of like the local dive bar where everyone hung out and stuff. And it turned out that the majority of her, when you sort of put in your time at a certain watering hole or something like that, like this certain set of years, like hers was right before mine, and there was a little bit of overlap there too. So. Yeah. And it even goes back further than that, because my mom and my stepdad used to buy all this like natural food, like this Walnut Acres type of stuff from the food co-op. And she and her grandma used to run the co-op. Like, she was this little teeny girl. Like, there's this little girl there who's in overalls and stuff like that. And I'm this little kid, and I always kind of noticed that, she was there and stuff. And she was just kind of quiet and hung out there. But I remember them. So little did I know that was my future wife.
Right.
It's just kind of one of those wild things. But yeah, we ended up. So it was a matter of time before we met, and
you're both from broken homes. You're both punk rock.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see that.
Yeah.
Just, the way that I remember my first like punk rock girlfriend, and we just clung to each other because we were such outsiders in the community back, and it's hard to explain to millennials just how ostracized like anybody with any interest in punk rock would be, in the time before, MXPX and the sort of commercial success of Green Day and NoFX.
Yeah.
Like, punk rock was a thing that was an outlaw culture that was potentially satanic or communist or any of the other things that get you burned at the stake in a lot of towns, and so.
Right.
You kind of like, what's that term that millennials used? You get cuffed up, and it's tight.
Yeah.
You draw this little cocoon around yourselves, and it's a bubble that lasts for years a lot of times. So you guys decided to move to Louisville.
Yeah, we did, and we thought, okay, she'd worked in an ad agency, and that didn't work out. But she was like, you know what? Before that, she tried doing just some insurance clerk work and stuff. And she's like, "Hey, this is a great straight job to get into." And by that time, my hair was short and crisp and stuff like that, and we could fake it for a while. So we ended up faking it for a good decade and a half, and we did our straight jobs and stuff, and she was actually great at it. We ended up moving around the place because they had fast-tracked her for management, and which I thought was awesome. I thought that was like that was a really bold feminist statement that, she could just move up into, she could be the leader and stuff. And she had done such a great job that she was getting recognized. So we ended up moving. I was able to transfer to Austin. She moved to San Antonio. Those are only 45 minutes apart, so we just got a place in between and commuted. But
right. Were you already playing music in Stellar Regrets at this point?
Yeah, we'd played music in Stellar Regrets at this point. We'd done some shows. We didn't really get out and tour or anything like that because we were, the move was that we were going to put some money away and then, just make sure that we were secure and then do wild shit. Because one thing, Lisa was always very practical with money. She was absolutely great with it. She had this little piggy bank since she was 5 or something, some crazy young age. And she was absolutely shrewd with money. And, much to her credit, she was absolutely brilliant with it. I learned a few things. I'm not a tenth as shrewd as she is, but I'm just kind of very grateful for the experience and stuff. We did play. We didn't really get out and tour, but we did play, and we were still writing because we were still looking to eventually do something. When we made it to Texas, we did okay, but then we started to hit some. We hit bottom at that point. There were some rough spots, and that was because long story short, she was really. What we would find out later after she had transferred is that they had really missed a diagnosis that she was getting, that she had stage 1B endometrial cancer. And one of the very first signs that's very easy to miss because it doesn't show up on a pap smear is that it really, really fucks with your hormones. That's one of the very first telltale signs. And so she was just feeling like shit. And
you guys had this enormous love bubble that you were in as a partnership, as a couple, but also as bandmates. And you had made this pact with each other that you were going to go do the straight life so that you could be comfortable, because both of you had sort of brushed up against economic precarity. And then you moved to Texas. Mm-hmm. And because of this hormonal disruption, because of her onset of endometrial cancer, suddenly the bubble has burst.
It was, but we were both really confused as to what was going on. It was, part of it was, we thought, well, she's just, is she just really sick of me? What's going on? I don't understand what's going on. We're out here in the middle of nowhere, just trying to figure out why we're not getting along the way we used to. And, eventually, as it turned out, she transferred again to Virginia, which, was another opportunity she couldn't miss. And so, we were still in good enough shape that I still followed her and whatnot. And, had a great time in Austin, saw so many bands. That was a big part of forming my musical taste too. I loved my time there. This was a time in Austin before it got way expensive, and it was still genuinely weird. I think this is kind of the last phases of it being genuinely weird, and I loved it and stuff. But so there were some bright spots there too. But little did we know, once we moved there, she got diagnosed, and that was I remember when I first got the call. she was absolutely crying. I could not tell her where, because she was trying to rule out cancer. She had gone to get checked out, and she had some stuff going on, and I was like 5 blocks from home, and when she told me, like, the word cancer came out, it felt like I had, I can only speak for myself. And I was the lucky one. I wasn't her, but I had, it felt like I was just so taken aback that I felt like I was floating 3 stories above the car I was driving while I was driving the car, which is a scary ass thing to do. And made it home and stuff like that. But she came home as quickly as she could, which was like a half hour, 45 minutes later. She was trying to drive. She was in a different part of town, and she was like, "Don't worry about it. I'll just drive. I'll just drive. I just need some alone time." And just speaking for myself, I just ugly cried. I put Kate Bush's Running Up That Hill on loop and just like ugly cried the whole way. Just where she goes, "It's you and me." That part of it was just that just killed me. Like, I lost it every time I heard that.
Yeah.
And we tried to have a kid at that point because we were trying to do hormonal therapy. Her oncologist was like, "Well, there's a chance we might be able to knock this out." And there were some stories by that point about, some miracle babies they were able to have before getting a hysterectomy. But unfortunately, the pregnancy never happened, and the hormones didn't knock out she still tested positive for the cancer, so she got a hysterectomy, and she was completely cancer free for the next 5, 6, 7 years. We actually celebrated. We went up to Chicago. New Order was playing. That's her favorite band. It was we absolutely thought she was home free, but that's unfortunately not how it worked out. So,
when did you find out that she had cancer again?
Well, we had moved back to Louisville, and she had taken this really stressful field job because she really wanted to get all the way to this upper management position before we finally checked out and sort of did our midlife career change type deal, where I was supposed to get out of insurance completely and do music full time, not quite sure what I was going to do, and she was looking to get out into something that she really enjoyed, and we were so she was just burning it at both ends. And she was in a job where she was understaffed and under a lot of stress. And when you're under a lot of stress, a lot of times that manifests itself as physical pain. You've got a lot of body aches and things like that. You're tired. And her right-hand side was really hurting a whole lot. And she had gotten a couple of boils where a cat we had, Boris, had scratched her. So I thought, okay, those are just boils, put some rubbing alcohol on, they're going to go away. Well, it turns out they didn't. They just got darker and kept growing. So we eventually went to the ER, and they said, well, you have metastatic disease. Apparently it's come back, and they did a biopsy, and whatever it was really mangled. There was something in there had stuck around and just like hung out and just got really fucked up, and then just eventually just started spreading whatever it was. They think it was still uterine cancer. But we did absolutely everything we could to fight it. I had a file going at Memorial Sloan Kettering. Her Aunt Diane was ready to put her up in Manhattan so we could get that going. She was really scared to travel, so I also had another file at Cleveland Clinic, which I drove her up to and back. She was on very aggressive chemo, and unfortunately, she just wasn't able to beat it. Cancer gets a lot stronger when it starts to spread because it's comfortable in its own home environment. It's able to do that, but once it starts to get out, it's like it's like leaving home for the first time. Living with your parents is super easy. Getting out there and getting your first apartment, that's a big step, So, and then being able to move from city to city, which is basically what cancer does by the time it reaches stage 4, which is what we found out Lisa had was stage 4, that means the cancer is super strong by that point. And so she went through 3 different courses of chemo. The first one has a 20% success rate to get to 5 years. And, but, which looked like completely shitty odds from the outside. But when you're inside, you want to fight. If she had a 5% shot, if she had a 1% shot, you'd still look through that gleam of sunshine out the window and you would take that motherfucking shot, man,
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah.
So, she eventually went through a 3rd round of chemo, which, the insurance wouldn't even cover if they had done, the first 2 rounds, had they not tried the first 2 rounds first. And the first round cost $30,000 a month, which her insurance covered, thankfully. The 3rd round cost $50,000 a month, which is just absolutely staggering. And it just blows my mind. Like, what happens if you don't have insurance? You're absolutely fucked, man. So that's, that's my abstract brain of mine. I'm just kind of getting ahead of myself.
No, it's okay. No, I understand. It does make you furious, though.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because we were privileged, we were lucky, we had made it in our careers. We lived a comfortable middle class lifestyle with good health insurance and all of that stuff. And she was able to, she had this chemo that absolutely, it was an experimental chemo that was so aggressive. It messed up her voice. Of course, hair loss, weight loss. She lost her appetite. There was one meal I was able to make her that was scallops al olio. That was like the one thing that the chemo didn't fuck with, because it messes with your ability to eat beef, tomato sauce, different kinds of breads, all kinds of onions and things like that. And I was able to kind of narrow it down to this one thing that she was able to eat that was still kind of, it was a wonderful pasta dish with lots of cheese on it and stuff. And she was still able to enjoy that. And she was getting her chemo weekly. That was how aggressive it was. Usually it's once every 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And
people don't know, who haven't lived with someone who's been through this, is that sometimes these chemotherapies, they make your bones ache. They actually get down in the marrow of your bones, and your whole body hurts in these crazy ways. Your hair falls out, you're nauseated, as you said, your sense of taste changes. There's certain foods that just you can't process anymore, and it's rough, man.
It hits every cell in your body. That's the thing. There's such a thing as chemo brain, where your memory gets foggy and stuff like that too. And another part of dealing with someone with that level of cancer too is that you have family and friends involved, and they want you sort of enter this kind of dynamic where you need to be sensitive to the needs of others who really need to express their support for Lisa and stuff like that as well. But Lisa is only able to entertain so much, because that takes a lot of energy. And sometimes when you're in the situation, you try to take your mind off of it, and this keeps your mind on it. I'm having all these people visit because of this cancer. Can I just not think about this fucking cancer for a while? Can I just watch TV?
Man, there was a day when my mom was in hospice, and it was an uncharacteristically cool day in June, and it was bright and clear. And we moved all of the furniture in her hospice room out onto this patio.
Yeah.
And sat in the sun and just hung out. We didn't talk about cancer. We didn't talk about death. We didn't talk about hospice. We didn't talk about medicine. She had the little pain, the big red button, the fentanyl drip or whatever it is, morphine drip.
Yeah.
But other than that, like, that was the only really intrusion into this gathering of family members. That was really probably the last good day that she had.
And that was perfect.
Yeah.
You couldn't ask for better.
No.
That is the best way to handle that. Absolutely.
Yeah. But Lisa didn't beat the cancer.
No, she didn't beat the cancer. We had our last goal was to try and get it manageable, where we could get it stabilized to a point where she could go from having intravenous chemo to pill form. And when you do it on pill form, that means that, you know, we can sneak in some travel at the last minute. You know, we wanted to go to Paris, just do a few things. And, you know, just work out, you know, if there's a way for her to get off of it for a week or so, so she can enjoy all the fun, you know, all the food and whatnot. And we wanted to go to Barcelona to, you know, just to renew our vows and stuff. And, you know, we looked at doing that. And, unfortunately, with this kind of chemo, it really wrecks the hemoglobin in your blood, and so she needed blood transfusions. And so, Super Bowl Sunday, we had it was like at 7 a.m. That was the one time we could get in to have a transfusion, and she had a seizure on the way, which is not uncommon when you have low hemoglobin and stuff. That's you know, it's like if you bleed out or something, one of the last things happens is you have a seizure. But they did a CT scan to make sure she didn't have any hemorrhages or anything like that, and they found out that the cancer that was in her lungs shot up straight to her brain, and it was that gangly cancer that's the really, really fast, aggressive kind. And so they knew at that point that this was not operable, and she needed to go on Ativan to prevent further seizures and be kept comfortable. And that was her last week. And she was in a fugue state where she forgot she had the seizure. And that was pretty much when she knew that she was done. And we called all her family and friends where she had tried to keep it private somewhat because she wanted to beat it at some point, or she wanted it to be manageable. And we actually had our sort of remission dinner planned. We even had the menu done and all that stuff. But that was when Kelly, my sister-in-law, who was amazing throughout the whole thing, I really have to give props to her for just she absolutely just like it. And Stewie, my father-in-law, was wonderful. And, you know, they were all just kind of doing things that, because my plate was so full, just handling the medical stuff. And so she got a list together of, you know, how to contact all of old Lisa's friends so that they can talk to her and say goodbye to her and all of those things. And when she slipped away, I held her hand and I told her I loved her. And so that's one thing I can say, is that she didn't pass alone. It was at 3 a.m. and you know, I texted my dad. He came over, and that was when that's when they took her out and just put her on the elevator and stuff. And it kind of ended the way I always thought it would be, which is it would end sometime in the morning with Dad and me sitting at a Waffle House drinking coffee and just trying to talk about it, which is that I always knew it would work out like that, and that's how it ended up happening. Just him and me at Waffle House, just like going, well, shit, man. So
that's, you know, life goes on, and that's both wonderful and horrifying. Like, for me, the experience of losing someone I loved, you still got to go eat breakfast, you know?
And absolutely.
And then there's the whole process of dealing with all the things, you know? Like, you've got this terrible, heavy grief, and then you've got this, essentially, the task of moving house without getting to enjoy a new place.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I still live in the house that we had. It's a very nice house, but that's kind of a mixed blessing, and I'll kind of get to that because it kind of had some repercussions later in my life. But the thing that I realized that I because I've lost pets before, is that there's a point where I can just kind of be hyper rational for a certain amount of time because I needed to get a car, or I needed to rent a car because I was going to stay with my father-in-law for a little bit because he was going through a rough time too. Not only had he lost his daughter, but not long before that, he lost his wife to cancer as well. So, man, Stewie, I love you, dude, but it's like he needed me about as badly or worse than I needed him at that point, just to kind of hang out and mourn Lisa and stuff. And my job was very gracious about granting me a leave of absence where I could just go as long as I did. And so I was hyper rational enough to be able to get in touch with the probate attorney, tell him this is what I needed. I was able to do the research on the car that I have now, which has served me very well. But I knew I had a certain amount of window where I had to act, and I was going to be fine before it all came closing in. And so I was able to get that stuff done. And then sort of darkness descended on me, and Stu and I hung out for probably a good 3 weeks or so, and then my supervisor had called at work and said, "Hey, we're assembling this new team and stuff like that, and we'll leave your desk completely alone if you want to come back and stuff like that." And I thought, well, I have to think about life moving on and stuff. Because I needed to come back to Louisville. My neighbor's been a wonderful pet sitter, but she's just put so much into it, and it's time to kind of like try to figure out the rest of my life at that point. And
yeah.
So
how old was Lisa?
She was 42. Yeah, she was a little bit older than me, but she was she was a very young 42 though, and that's the thing that kind of, she'd worked so hard and was just robbed of so much opportunity, and that made me look at things a whole lot differently. It made me look at aging differently. It even made me look at things like suicide differently. Like recently with David Berman and stuff. That was rough because I'd kind of just to really kind of fast forward. I had ended up just to kind of like gloss over. I ended up really falling hard and fast in love with someone else a few years later, and we ended up dating, and it didn't work out, and I was just absolutely just gutted. And and by that point, the Purple Mountains record comes out, and that was like helped me get through it. It was wonderful. I thought, man, this is brilliant stuff. And it seemed like David Berman was seemed like he was emerging from a dark period, because I was really projecting my experience on him, which isn't fair. And I thought, well, he's getting ready to tour. His record is loved. He's loved. I hope everything works out. This is kind of a catharsis for him, and I hope his future is brighter and stuff like that. And then things happened the way they did, which just really fucked with a lot of us. And I'm, especially and Brett, I'm sorry if bringing you into this bothers you or something like that, but they were friends, and that was he kind of read into it the same thing I did. Like, the record brought us joy and healing and stuff, and there was a lot of positive, there was a lot of brilliance in that, and it was just really tragic and kind of hard to handle. But
talking about our friend Brett Eugene Ralph.
Yeah,
he was a good friend of David Berman, and he's an unbelievably gifted poet, and just like a human Mount Rushmore of great ideas. I really love Brett, but he took David's suicide really hard.
Yeah.
Justifiably so.
Absolutely. They were good friends, and it was a shock. It was a shock even to me, just personally, because it was, it just kind of helped me get through my thing, which is, I was just going through a breakup, that's kind of petty compared to going through some a dear friend of yours who just committed suicide. That is a major thing, but that was still like there was a whole lot to process with that. And just looking at things the way I do, if you're listening to this and your life is just really low, just consider the fact that there may be a lot of great things that are going to happen to you that just aren't even on your radar yet. There are a lot of chances you could have. There are a lot of changes that you just might not even see. And if a lot of us tend to have tunnel vision in the way we look at our lives, because our worlds are kind of our own little worlds, and there are all kinds of other worlds that happen too, if I'm making any kind of sense. And
sure.
If you just kind of get out and expose yourself to different things, and that could be a glimpse of hope.
Hey, Crash and Ride would like you to know about a new industry-wide initiative focused on mental health care called Backline. Backline is a hub for artists, industry professionals, and their families to quickly and easily access mental health and wellness resources. Backline is partnered with leading support organizations and care providers to streamline access to services specifically geared towards the music industry. Go to www.backline.care to get the support you need to thrive, both on and off the road. I spoke to Backline this week for the services episode. That's going to be up in the next couple of weeks. But what they do is they actually assign a caseworker to each musician who contacts them, and they help you find resources for depression treatment, substance abuse treatment, help with your anxiety. They can hook you up with sober companions for touring and all kinds of other stuff. So go to backline.cares for more information. I also spoke to NutriSpace this week and learned a few things. I spoke to Leslie Cobbs, who works at NutriSpace, and she gave me some new information. You don't have to be a musician to get referrals from NutriSpace. It can be subsidized if you're a musician, but if you're anybody who's suffering from depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, etc., you can walk into the NutriSpace building here in Athens, Georgia, and tell them that you need help, and they can start the process of referring you to a counselor and get you the help that you need. Go to nuci.org, that's nuci.org, or call 706-227-1515 for more information. Also, if you're struggling with anxiety, depression, or thoughts of self-harm, you can always call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255. It's 24/7. It's free. It's confidential. They have trained volunteers to help you through your crisis. 1-800-273-8255, or go to suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Now, if you're a regular listener to the show, you know that this is a point normally where I would suggest that trans people contact the Trans Lifeline's peer support line. I called that line myself this week. I was held on hold for 45 seconds and the call got dropped. I'm a little frustrated by that. I think that's counterproductive. I'm going to look into that. I'm going to contact some trans friends about their own experiences with the trans peer support line. And I'm going to try to find out if they need more money, more volunteers, if there's some way we can help, because as a community, we need to lift our trans brothers and sisters up and not have them just get dumped into a whole queue and then disconnected. Okay, let's jump back into our interview with Sam Scholten. Talk to me a little bit about climbing out of the hole after Lisa's death.
For the first year, I knew I was just going to be in mourning, and I was in no shape to date anyone at that point. I was not single at that point. I was very much a widow, and even if I did, I would be absolutely shitty for whoever I was with, because it would just be that much baggage, and And the thing of it is, I had kind of leaned on the job that I had gone back to as some kind of Tao in an ever-changing world, if that makes sense. It's the
Sure.
one thing. It's the train. It's the country that got bombed, but the trains still run on time type of thing.
Right.
Where you need some kind of consistency, some kind of structure in order to be able to function. And so, keeping that job was because I was able to leave at any time, but and just kind of like drift off or whatever. Like we were prepared for it, but it was a way to make sure that I didn't like spiral into alcoholism or drug addiction or something like that. And even then I was still drinking pretty heavy. I actually had kind of a system where, if I go out to a bar or something, I'd have a 3-stage beer drinking. Like the first few would be, the nice fancy craft brews. And then the second I'd hit the IPAs to do the heavy lifting. And then by the third stage, it was PBR because by then, by golly, it's a good tasting beer.
Right. Right. I think that, and I'm not being judgmental here, but if you put that much time into thinking about the stages of intoxication, that you may be ever developing a little bit of a problem.
Exactly. And so what I would do is then I would do some sober months. I would do a sober month here, a sober month there, because I wanted, and that's also why I stayed in that job too, because if I was not functional enough to stay in that job, then that was available as a red flag to me that I was spiraling out, because if you don't, then, you could just get up and day drink or whatever.
Right.
You can get up, or you can just you could just get up and like smoke an entire half ounce and just eat pizza all day or whatever, and just and do nothing. But
I mean, if you're a late 30s guy who just lost his wife, who you'd planned to get old with, no one would blame you, But
yeah, but at the same time, it's I'm very, very lucky to have had a lot of supportive friends in my life too. And that was a huge part of getting me through this. And I owe all of you an immense debt of gratitude. But I felt as though I was able to have some people say, you know what, you really ought to slow down. And another part of the reason I didn't want to quit my job at that point was because I didn't want to make any rash decisions. I didn't want to move. I was like, maybe I should leave town. Maybe I should make a big change. Maybe this is my opportunity to move to New York or Chicago or something like that. But I was doing some dumb shit then. I had there was one spring morning where a couple months after Lisa passed, where I'd tried to squeeze a whole weekend's worth of yard work into a morning and an early afternoon, that so I could be able to make it to a party and stuff. And I walked in front of the refrigerator and I literally collapsed right in front of the fridge. I had lost consciousness in front of there, because I was also crash dieting because I was trying to lose weight, because I'm like, eventually I'm gonna have to get out there and start dating and stuff. So, and I kind of let myself go when Lisa got sick, so I got to make up for that. So, at that point, that's where it really hit me that I am not in a position to make any rash decisions at this point, and my judgment is not the best. So I need to figure out how to make sure I'm not spiraling into some kind of addiction or something like that. I need to make sure there are some checks and balances in my life to make sure that I'm kind of stable in some way, because at this point I am single. It's not like I'm in a family or something like that. I mean, and who's able to keep me in check. And there's kind of two sides to that too, because I also don't want to be like the shitty alcoholic father that sucks up the kids' lives or whatever as well. But
right. Were you doing therapy?
No, and the reason I wasn't, I knew I should have, but I knew the reason I shouldn't have, and everyone who's listening is welcome to tell me I'm doing it. Made the wrong choice. I'm definitely open to that. Because I am, I really should now, because some shit's happened since, but, I have an abstract random mind. I have 5, 6, 7 different thoughts going on at the same time. And Lord have mercy on the therapist that has to listen to all my shit, and try to make sense of it, because they're people too. So I've spent a lot of time trying to organize my thoughts into something that would make sense for another human being to hear, so that they'd have something to work with, instead of like 9 different things going on at the same time where they're like, oh shit, man. Or what if they just focus on one thing and ignore all the other shit? And, I don't know. Am I making sense here?
You may be overthinking therapy just a hair. I mean, they do get paid a lot of money to sort those things out. But,
true.
And also, I don't think it's always. I mean, ideally, therapy helps you sort of develop a cohesive narrative of your emotional life, but at the same time, that's not always the goal. Sometimes it's just good to like kind of let some of the sadness out by talking to another human being in a way that someone's going to be non-judgmental and accepting and supportive. But everyone's got a different path though, and it seems like it's been how long now? 5 years since Lisa passed?
Yeah, it's going to be 5 years as of next year.
Yeah, or
as of next
January
February.
Or February.
Yeah. So
and the last few times I've seen you, you've looked amazing, and you've got a band.
Thank you.
A really great band working on your second record. So, like, whether you did therapy or not, clearly you didn't make the wrong decision.
Well, the thing is, I still kind of had therapy. I had all these wonderful people in my life. Like a lot of the PRF stuff. A lot of that stuff was really life affirming to me. It was kind of, it was. Everyone there was absolutely wonderful. It reached out, and a lot of that was just where I could kind of unburden and share my pain. And, that's actually where I met Mandy Branch from Motherfuckers. And she, cause of her situation with her dad and her mom and stuff, because she was dealing with her own stuff, and she'd gone through a hell of a rocky path as well.
Yeah.
And of course, anyone familiar with her knows she's an amazing human being. And
I feel like the world is going to spend a lot of time catching up with Mandy once they figure out what a brilliant person she is. I mean, not just founding member of one of the greatest noise rock bands of all time, Motherfucker, but also
absolutely
children's author, also was in Down with the Woo, another great Athens band. Also, now, she's got this side project called Father Werewolf that's brilliant. I mean, I should really have her on the show, I think. But yeah, Mandy is one of the most phenomenal people I've ever met, and incredibly emotionally resilient.
Yeah, absolutely.
The news of Lisa's passing went out like a lightning bolt through the PRF community. Like, I got 3 texts the day after it happened.
Oh wow!
People were like, "Sam's wife has passed. Have you spoken to him?" And I was like, Sam and we haven't hung out that much, and it wasn't until later that we got to be close. But like, there was definitely like that community rallied, and I'm really proud of that.
And I can't begin to express the debt of gratitude I had to everyone. I mean, and I basically, I'm here for anyone else who's in need of that. I know, you had a wonderful episode with Josie Cool, and that was like, she's going through a rough patch too, and has had it too. And I just want to express my love to her, and
for anybody who listens to this show frequently knows that the PRF is the sort of tongue-in-cheek name, the premier rock forum of the Electrical Audio forums, which is the Electrical Audio is a studio in Chicago founded by Steve Albini. Lots of engineers and producers work out of there. There's a web forum around the studio that sort of became its own thing with a big community of musicians and engineers and music fans, and now the PRF, as we sort of like I said, refer to ourselves as a little bit sarcastically, is now a community that has several annual events, a summer barbecue where 40-something bands play over the course of 4 or 5 days, and then there's the Thunder Snow, which is the winter event where they lock out an entire hotel on the Upper Peninsula next to a rock-solid frozen lake and thigh-deep in snow, and bands play all weekend, and Yeah, and that PRF community is very close and it's very supportive, and there's friends I'll have for the rest of my life because of the PRF. So the PRF events, I noticed that you were at a lot of them in the wake of Lisa's passing, and every time I saw you, you looked a little better, a little stronger, a little happier. The last time I think we saw each other was in Durham, North Carolina.
Yeah.
And so when did Bon Air start?
Bon Air started. I had first put a band together with some old high school friends right after Lisa passed. It was called Tape Age, and that was kind of starting to run its course because Dave, the drummer, who, by the way, was the same drummer that Lisa was trying to poach when she and I first met, but he was going through some family issues and stuff like that. But I was in. So that was starting to fizzle out. But meanwhile, I was going through one of my sober months, which actually ended up being 2 months. I just wanted to push it through for 2 months because I was really trying to focus on my health at that point. And so I was kind of at the end of my really heavy stage of mourning Lisa's passing and stuff like that. And I was starting to fancy this one girl who I ended up dating, who was the one where I just broke up with, and I was crushed over it and stuff like that. And so when you're sober, you have to process your feelings. You can't just like mute them. So
I mean, allegedly.
I thought, well, allegedly.
I mean, there's all kinds of things I've found in sobriety to avoid having to address my feelings. I mean, the bakery is open at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, but there's I mean, hey, carbs are great too, right? Yeah.
So you're seeing this girl, and you're having a lot of feelings.
Well, yeah. The thing is, when I got out of Total Morning, I was starting to think about getting back out there, and I thought, well, shit, man, I got this on lock. My last relationship was a roaring success. The only reason it's over now is because she died of cancer. I'm not single because I'm a cheater or abusive or toxic or one of those serial monogamists who just goes through shitty relationship after shitty relationship and just never works out or any of that kind of stuff. That's not me,
Right.
Well, not so fast, because, the thing is, I make no apology for Lisa being a big part of my life, and she casts a shadow over my life now, but still I can't really make an apology over it. But at the same time, I have to be considerate of, how someone else is going to feel going into it. And everyone's a human being, and everyone, I can understand where that's kind of daunting, where, I want to be completely respectful of her privacy, so I don't really want to drag details into it. But there's one issue I wanted to focus on, and that's the fact that I was never really able to make her understand that my love for her was like 100% real and genuine, and it was passionate. And, she was convinced that, in the context of Lisa and in the context of me just being in awe, like there was a whole lot of Lisa that was just really awesome, and I'm just still in awe of. And and because of that, the girl I was seeing was convinced that I was faking it or projecting all my unspent feelings for Lisa on her, which is not fair, because the woman I was seeing she's a beautiful person in her own way with a strong personality, and just absolutely deserves to flourish and be her. So the thing is, we struggle to establish that kind of like basic trust, because it wasn't really something where we could point to anything rational, where I did anything sketchy, but it was just kind of one of those things where if you feel uneasy, and that sort of relationship advice thing, that if something isn't sitting well with you, you kind of need to trust it, sort of thing. So unfortunately, it just kind of ended up not working out. So,
I mean, most relationships don't.
Right. Well, I think what Dan Savage said, something like, every relationship fails except the one that doesn't.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
But, also looking back on it, just in retrospect, because it's been a few months since, and, I'm just kind of, I noticed something about me where I was so passionate about this relationship. Like I just had her on a pedestal, which has a dark side too, because, like Joni Mitchell says, they put me on a pedestal and I started to wobble. That's actually not a good spot to be in.
Right, right.
Um, and so another thing was that I was so into it that I kind of recognized that I'd done some codependent stuff, and I will absolutely do my best to not be a controlling person. But she said I was being controlling in some ways because I felt like I needed to have my feelings affirmed and stuff.
You're still carrying around a pretty substantial amount of sadness, and you will be for the rest of your life. And I'm sure there's probably a desire to protect yourself somewhat from the possibility of loss because you've suffered such a huge one.
Yeah. And that kind of clouded, that just kind of clouded my ability to act and stuff too. So, once I kind of had that revelation that maybe I was acting in a codependent way, well, this is something where I'm not really able to figure out how to get out of that. So that's, when I said earlier in our conversation that I finally feel like I've got something where, I don't have to like explain it in 15-part harmony or just like come to a therapist with a whole bunch of crumpled up Post-it notes and say, hey, make sense of this.
No, I mean, I don't think that's an unfair thing to do to a therapist.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, we're almost at 5 years on, how long were you and Lisa together?
15 going on 16 years. Like, it was a long-ass relationship.
You got to expect that there's still a lot of rebuilding that you have to do and that you shouldn't put too much pressure on yourself. But
sure.
But also, whenever I've been down in like the sort of desolation of loss, or for me, like loss has been the first part of long depressive spirals. And the most valuable thing anybody ever said to me when I was in the middle of one of those things was they said, you're not going to wake up one day and just be better. Like it's not like a night and day, black and white, Manichaean thing. Like there will be days where you just feel a little bit less like shit.
Yeah.
And it's a long, gradual process of climbing out. If there was someone that you knew who was in the similar situation, who was like down in it right now, what part of your experience would you share with them to kind of help them like get through it?
Well, the first thing I would say is, number one, give yourself some space, because I mean, it's okay to go through what you're going through. And
were there times when you doubted that for yourself? Were there times when you thought, I shouldn't be this down?
Yeah, I mean, and part of it too is when you get there is a level of depression where you go to where you just can't be that depressed anymore, and you just get numb. And when this happens, and and the thing is, I wasn't the only one suffering. Like my sister-in-law Kelly was suffering, and Stewie was really suffering because he also lost his wife as well as his daughter. So, there's a point to where there's a point of depression where you just get numb. It's not so much you just want to ugly cry so much as you just like, man, this bed feels real good right now. And, it's like, I've got like a heated bed sheet or electric blankets on, and man, this feels so good. And I don't have to make plans today. This is self-care, man. I'm not doing shit. I don't have to do shit, and what you're describing is one of those, like, one of these days I just have to feel better. What I've experienced is that happens in stair steps. There's that one morning where the sun cracks out just fine, and you're like, okay, I'm going to get out today, or I'm going to accomplish this today, or I'm going to get to the library and pick out a book that's in a subject that's out of my comfort zone today, and kind of, do some investing in myself, or I'm going to go jogging. I'm going to go out and enjoy nature. I'm going to go to the park. for me, it's not, you don't go from 0 to 100. You go by little stair steps, and and it's at your own pace, and you have the whole rest of your life to worry about it. And if you don't, if you don't get completely there, that's okay. But another thing you do need to realize if you're going through this is that, sometimes you never really know who's there for you. And I was very fortunate that, to have such a supportive network. I think the two big platitudes that I would have to throw out there are humility and gratitude. Humility in the fact that I'm just not strong enough. I have limitations, but at the same time, I was able to lean on people, and and that was absolutely wonderful. So don't be too proud to reach out.
I think it's also important to remember that it's not a disservice to the memory of the person that you loved to allow yourself to feel some happiness.
Yeah. Well, Lisa wanted me to be happy.
Yeah.
One thing I did was I took our travel fund and I traveled on Lisa's and my behalf. She wanted me to do that. She wanted me to be happy. She wanted me to move on and find someone that would make me happy. And I did get to. I was able to get out to Europe a few times. There are a few other places I'd like to visit too. I'd like to eventually make it out down to South America and to Japan, and of course I want to see Bora Bora. That place looks gorgeous too.
Yeah.
I was able to spread Lisa's ashes on the Champs-Élysées. That was great.
Oh man,
she loved Paris so much, and that I felt so good that I was able to spread. Like they had this. There was a street cleaner there, and they had these tree grates where I was able to just spill the ashes into the soil. I'm like, yeah, you can't touch this. Lisa's going to be here forever.
Yeah. So Bon Air is making records, and you sort of you pour. I've heard the songs, and it's clear you're pouring a lot into that, and it seems to be helping.
Yeah, absolutely.
Working on a new record.
Yeah, and I'm stoked about it too. And hopefully we'll. We really wanted to tour this record a whole lot more, but Carter, the drummer, I was very blessed to have been very blessed to have. He's been great. He had to deal with some family stuff, and then I had to deal with some personal stuff, like with some folks in my life too. So that kind of shunted it a little bit. But he's moving to Ely, Minnesota this coming spring.
Why?
It's a resort town, and plus it's close to Canada, so I guess if you get sick, you can just like canoe over and just like be, hey man, So I mean, hopefully we'll get some kind of universal care, sometime soon where we can benefit from it. I mean, not to go off on too much of a tangent, but there's so many reasons I think that should just be made available to people. Like, cancer, debilitating illnesses, this would literally save so many lives. But I can't really understate that.
Yeah. Well, I usually wind these interviews up with 10 questions. I think you've heard a couple of shows now, so you know the gist of them. Do you want to jump in?
Sure, let's jump in.
All right. What is the fondest memory you have of a meal that you've had?
I would say when I was in Barcelona, I'd just gotten into town, and I found this restaurant in the Gothic Quarter where it had this paella that had all the seafood in it had to have been swimming like hours before. It was like the freshest stuff, and it was amazing. And I had some tapas there. Like I was just there by myself, and just usually when I'm in Europe or something, either the locals are usually pretty outgoing because I'm just looking to hang out or something. So it's just me by the beginning of an evening, and it's like a crew of 10 of us by the end of the night, just random folks and stuff. And it was a wonderful evening. It was like the air was coming off the beach, and they had the festival of St. John. So I think part of my memory was enhanced by that. But they had fireworks everywhere. It was like a party up and down the beach. But this paella was amazing, and it was paired with this impeccably with this local Spanish wine. It was Spanish white wine. It was kind of an off-dry thing. And That whole trip was a gastronomic tour de force, to be honest with you. Like, I was going through France then, and so I had a great bistro meal near the Centre Pompidou. So, like, I was also in Milan, so I had the best pizza, I had the best gelato, I had the best pasta bolognese, like, everything. Like, there was some stiff competition there, but this paella was just, like, mind-blowing.
Second question, what is the most frightened you've ever been?
Most frightened I've ever been was when we were going into Lisa's third round of chemo, and she was, we'd just gotten back from her oncologist, and at Cleveland Clinic, and the look in her eyes was ominous, and she's like, "You're not going to let me die, are you?" And I couldn't lie to her, but I just had to compose myself and just be the biggest pillar of strength I could. And I was completely unsure of myself that I was able to do that and say, "Look, we're doing absolutely everything I can, and I will absolutely not let this happen if I have any say so over it once, whatsoever." And, you just seeing that look, I mean, this is, you're just, you're staring mortality in the face right there. It doesn't get any scarier than that, to be honest with you. And so not only that, but you're also kind of shoring up your own insecurities as well. So that was a pretty scary ass moment for me. That's some real fear.
Yeah. What is the thing in your life that you've lost that you regret losing the most?
Well, besides Lisa, which, I mean, I regret having lost some things. I regret having lost this past relationship that I really wanted to work. But, the thing is, we're all still alive and healthy and able to move on and there's still a shot at happiness. So it has to be Lisa. But besides those things, I would say the thing I regret losing the most is time. Time I've wasted not jumping into things, because time is the most finite thing we have. That's the thing we think we have that we really don't. Yeah.
Tell me about a time you received an act of kindness from a stranger.
Probably the last two. Lisa was getting into her last week of being around, and we had just gotten back from the doctor, and he'd just given us the "you should gather your affairs" speech.
Man.
And we went to Kroger's, and this is the Hubbard's Lane Kroger's, which if anyone from Louisville is listening to this, this is kind of a place where you run that and the Goss Avenue Kroger, the Kroger where you always run into people that you know and stuff. But because so many people go through it, and I put Lisa into this cart, and she was barely able to talk, and I had her point to whatever foods she could. Like, we spent 2 hours through their shopping, and I just wheeled her through slowly, and she was able to point to whatever groceries she wanted, whatever counters. And there was someone else who was going through, who had a relative go through cancer, and she absolutely, she saw the mask that Lisa had on her face, and she was obviously, Lisa was obviously going through some deep chemo at that point. And so she came over and gave Lisa a pep talk that really just kind of lifted her spirits and brought her out of it. And that was, that just really made the next few days a whole lot better. So, do
you remember any of what she said?
She had kind of relayed some of her own experiences, and on it, frankly, it's kind of a blur, so I don't remember too many details. I remember Lisa's reaction more than anything.
Yeah.
But she kind of relayed some of her own experiences and said, "Just be strong. There's hope." Which, I mean, that wasn't entirely false. We didn't know Lisa had the brain stuff by then. She stole the 20% shot. So there's still, as far as I knew at the time, she was being completely truthful. And I thought that was she's like, well, her mom was going through some chemo as well, and was doing better. And I thought, well, here's some hope that maybe Lisa can do better and be stable. We can get out and travel or something. So that really seriously lifted up Lisa's spirits, which in turn lifted up mine.
Yeah. What's your favorite place to gig?
I love. Honestly, I have a blast playing the Port of Kenosha. It's always fun there. Like, everyone there is always into it. Like, anytime we've played there has just been a trip. And like the last time we were there, we just it was just kind of on the spur of the moment. We were up in Milwaukee, and I think Conan Neutron was like, "Why aren't you guys playing the Port of Kenosha with us?" I'm like, "I don't know. We're here. Why aren't we doing that? We got the next night free. Let's do it." And so anytime we're there, it's always great.
I'm hearing good things, man. The Northern Midwestern punk scene is just booming right now between Kenosha and Kalamazoo. A lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to get up to Kalamazoo before too long. There's a guy who's going to sort of take over on drums. His name is John, and he is down to tour, and I'm super excited about that because I want to get up to Kalamazoo as well. Man, Milwaukee and Kenosha, that kind of whole strip right up on top of Chicago has just always been so positive for us. And
yeah. So visa and income considerations aside, if you could live anywhere in the world, where would you live?
Honestly, I don't know if I've seen enough places to make a good assessment of that, but I fell in love with Santa Fe. When the girl I was seeing and I we had done some traveling down through the Southwest, and just Santa Fe is such a really, really cool place. I went to the George O'Keeffe Museum, and I immediately saw why she fell in love with it. It's small, but it's small and it's walkable and it's artsy, but it's in the desert, and there's just something about it that's like being in the ocean that's just therapeutic and just calming and just kind of tunes you into the universe, if that makes any sense. But I also love Barcelona too.
I'm a big Barcelona fan here.
Yeah. I mean, I could retire in Barcelona easily. I sure would not mind that.
Do you have an ideal musical instrument, and if so, do you already own it?
Yes, I do. My EGC baritone is a 30-inch baritone, and it took a year and a half for Kevin to build, and which is great because it also took a year. I had a year and a half to pay it off. It's not cheap, but it was definitely worth the wait. It was. It's a very heavy instrument. It's acrylic, which is basically lucite, so it's very heavy, and it kind of has a scoop tone, but it's an aluminum neck through guitar, and with the long scale, it sounds like the low end of a piano. So the chords ring through that so much, and I didn't have that guitar on the last Bon Air record, but it is all over the new one, and I had such a great time recording with it. It just sounds so amazing. I have a lot of effects and stuff because Bon Air is a duo. It's just Carter and me, and when I did the recording, so much of it was dry because I love the sound of that guitar. It was so cool.
Is there an instrument that you've lost either to theft or having to sell it that you wish desperately you could get back?
Yeah, I had a Gibson Explorer that I got used. It was from the 80s, and it was gray, and it didn't have a pick guard on it. And it, at the time I thought it looked everyone was assuming it was like super metal looking. I thought it was kind of rocking it like Rick Nielsen was. But it sounded great. It had that Gibson crunch to it, but it also had a bite to it. It had where it would just cut through. But, just when I put it on the neck pickup, it had this wonderful low mellowness to it as well. And it was just a part of my sound at the time that I thought was really cool, and I'd love to bring that back.
Where's that? Where did you sell it, or what happened?
I had to pawn it. It was I was I was broke as a joke back then. I was in college, and things being what they were. I had a Telecaster at the time, so I'm like, man, I got a Telly. The Telly's going to get me through anything.
Tell me more about the Telecaster.
Oh, the Telly. Oh, the Telly was great too. It was a Japanese Telly that was. It had gold hardware, which looked really great new. It started to wear off, but it sounded really nice. It was an ash Telly, so kind of had a little bit of sparkle to it. I was just kind of getting tuned into what a Telecaster could do, and just the coming from a Gibson, that's the kind of Fender you get after you come from a Gibson. You don't go going full Strat is a bit much for us, for us Gibson folks who are trying to cross over. You just have to have that Telly thing.
Yeah, it's a stepping stone.
Yeah.
If you could sit in with any artist on one song in the entire world, who would that artist be, and what would the song be?
Anyone who knows me well enough knows it's going to be New Order, and it would be Love Will Tear Us Apart.
Yeah.
Or maybe Peter Hook. I'd be happy with that too.
Yeah, just guitar. Or are you going to play guitar and sing?
Yeah, actually, or maybe just sing, because just to brag on myself for a little bit. I was at a PRF Thundersnow one time, and they were doing karaoke, and I was kind of able to get it pretty close to nailing Ian Curtis on that. So, but the irony of that song is that that was the song that Lisa and I bonded on when we first met. Actually, when we second met, because I took her out and we went to a party of, a friend of mine's party, and where we were getting to know each other better. And we both loved that song. So we bonded over that song, which is like probably the greatest breakup song ever written, but it was also the song that,
I was going to say,
I mean, the irony,
kind of an ironic song
to
kick a relationship off on, but yeah.
But we had this wildly successful relationship where we bonded off this song that's this morose breakup song that ended up being Ian Curtis's suicide note. It's like, wow, that's weird. But it also was something I'd played to help get over, to help me process, when I lost Lisa, because there's still that shadow of death in there, and loss, and so, I mean, that's probably the song I'll have played at my funeral too. Like, that is my song. It's Love Will Tear Us Apart.
Last question. If you can imagine a taxi that can go anywhere in time or space, it's not constrained by sort of our concept of geography and time. And you got in the taxi and you said to the driver, "Hey man, take me home." Where's home? Where would the taxi take you?
I've heard this question before and I've pondered it, and that's kind of a rough one, because, home could be Pittsburgh, or home could be Charleston, or home could be here, where Lisa and I had kind of built our lives. And, because my folks are getting older too, I kind of need to stick around. So this is, my decision to stay here in Louisville is because it's kind of been home. It's where my family is and stuff. So I guess I'll have to settle on that as an answer. But I'm kind of torn in between the three places, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, there's no right or wrong answer.
Yeah.
Well, man, I really appreciate you doing this. It's been great.
I hope this has been helpful to anyone else going through this. I know I'm certainly not the only person who's gone through this, and if there is anyone who, if there is anyone out there listening, I hope that I can be of some help, and that I'm available to you.
Yeah, it's one of the great tragedies of life and love that someone has to leave first, and it's doubly tragic in your case because Lisa was so young.
Yes, she was.
It's been a real. It's been really life affirming to watch you kind of come out of it these last few years and do better and continue to make great music. And
thank you so much.
And be a part of this community that we're a part of, man. So thanks for doing this.
Thank you. I'm honored. I appreciate it so much.
All right, thanks, Sam. Man, that was amazing. And that's a good guy. Thank you for doing this, Sam. Thank you for listening. Thanks to our producer, Jake Kreger, who sends me notes every week telling me how to make the show better. If the show's better now than the first time you heard it, well, that's all on Jake. Thanks also to Gene Wolflick and the band The Powder Room. All the music you hear on Crash and Ride is from The Powder Room's various releases. You can hear more at thepowderroom.bandcamp.com. They're one of my favorite bands. Gene's one of my favorite guitar players and songwriters of all time. Go check them out. Throw them a few bucks. Oh, I sent out that survey, like, how can we make the show better? And one person, God love them, they said, that intro music is a little harsh and seems inappropriate for the subject matter. And I was like, I will change that tune when I'm sick of hearing it, but it is such a banger. Man, I'm sorry if you people find that like abrasive, but the Powder Room is an amazing band, and I get pumped every time I hear that song. So, I guess try to enjoy it for now. Also, thanks to Heil Audio for giving me such a good deal on these two PR40s I used to do interviews with and my voiceovers with. The Heil PR40 is a great studio microphone. I used it forever on snare drum, bass drum, and bass cabinet. But it turns out it's a great voiceover mic. If you're looking to upgrade your mics for your podcast, you could do a lot worse than the Heil PR40. I love mine. All right, the show's website is crashandridepodcast.com. You can find supplemental materials about stuff that we talk about on the show. You can find links to some of the writing I've done. If you're interested in that at all, you can buy coffee or T-shirts there, any other merchandise we come up with for the show. You can email the show at crashandride@protonmail.com. That email is private. It's encrypted. Nobody reads it but me. I'll protect your anonymity at all costs unless you give me permission to use your name on the show explicitly. All right, until we speak again. Take care of yourself. Be kind to yourself. Ask for help if you need it. Go see live music. Support your favorite band. And remember, loud guitars save lives.